Has Tennessee's fan base overreacted to the loss against Arkansas? How about yes, they can still make the college football playoff? No, that was a terrible loss. And in this case, perhaps both can be true. But I've talked to a ton of people, an absolute ton of people that just don't seem to believe that Tennessee has any chance, that Tennessee has any chance at making the college football playoff, that yes, they might beat Florida. All is lost. Nico is an absolute wash. He is no good. Guys, let's take a second. We like to compare him to underclassmen who have made big impacts. And in a recent column, I pointed out Tim Tebow and Johnny Manziel. Well, Johnny Manziel didn't go undefeated. And I will just go ahead and tell you, Nico is of higher character. And Tim Tebow lost the game to Ole Miss, right, where he had the famous speech after that he technically stole from Percy Harvin, but that's neither here nor there.
Yes.
But none of these guys are perfect. And Nico Iamaleava is not perfect. Now, I think there is going to be a poster boy at some point for NIL gone too strong, too fast. It might be Nico, but I'm not even close to considering that. And I have every quarterback that I'm old enough to have seen the beginning of his career, I have seen him be confused. I'll give you a prime example. When I got back into this biz, I did some work for Saturday Down South, and they said, you know, the irony of it is Alabama's the biggest program, but we don't ever get competent people to cover Alabama. And I said, I like to think of myself as competent. And they said, well, we agree. So I covered Alabama for that year. And it was Bryce Young's freshman year. And he looked fantastic. And I still say if he doesn't go to the Panthers, he would have been a solid NFL quarterback despite his size. But you and I know that it's a lottery in terms of where you go, whether or not you're going to be treated right and have a good franchise behind you. But I think we would both agree that Bryce Young was an elite college quarterback, right?
Totally agree.
Okay. Caleb, you would agree with this if I had the video, and I don't, but they had, his first game was against Miami, I believe. Is that correct?
Pulling it up now. Bryce Young game log 2021.
Okay, so nevertheless, he went for the first 3 or so games looking like he was too intent to get the ball downfield and just absolutely refused to run. Now, as a whole, I would rather have a quarterback that looks downfield, keeps his eyes downfield, and doesn't think run immediately. Would you agree with that, Caleb?
Totally agree.
However, he was lacking decisiveness when an easy 5, 7, 10 yards were there. And he would just kind of hang. This is outside the pocket. And he would just kind of hang back behind the line of scrimmage, trying to make something happen downfield. It didn't look like the Bryce Young that we saw in his later years. That very well could be Nico. And for Bryce Young, it was 3 or 4 games where I'm like, dude, just run. Make the defense respect your running ability just a little bit. I'm not saying be a running quarterback, but that's part of college football now. If you can't run at all, you're a sitting duck. You're Grayson McCall. And Tennessee may have that with Nico. A guy with a little uncertainty early, not the exact same. It's not running, but how he read the field against a Sam Pittman defense that was determined to give him different looks. So for you Tennessee fans that are just absolutely off the bandwagon, I don't get it. And I've been a little bit frustrated by the community and the fan base. There is still everything to play for. Caleb, I come from a time in which you lost to Florida, and 99.9% of the time, you were not going to be able to get back involved in a 2-team national championship game, right?
Correct.
Caleb, this is way different. It's all out there to play for. I know they've got issues at offensive tackle, but every team has an issue somewhere. Everything is still there to play for, Caleb.
I think we have to, and I'm going to say myself in this as much as Dave, probably even more because of the way I drove the train. I think we have to share some culpability in why the fans are overreacting, Dave. Because what have we been telling people for 2 years? Yes, Nico's young, he's kind of finding his groove. However, you and I have both insisted that this offense takes 2 weeks to figure out. That it's a very simple offense.
Years.
I'm sorry?
You mean 2 years?
No, 2 weeks. We both have agreed that Josh Heupel's offense takes 2 weeks to figure out, pretty much. That it's a very easy offense to figure out, to learn if you're a quarterback.
Oh,
we
okay.
even said it.
Okay. I got you. Okay, go ahead. I was going to lead another point, but it's similar. Go ahead.
We've said that it's an easy offense to figure out. We've said that Nico was created in a lab to run this offense. We've said he's a perfect fit for the offense, unlike Joe Milton was last year. So we said it would look like the 2022 offense with Hendon Hooker. We also said that more important for this offense is experience on the offensive line and experience at receiver. Tennessee has both of those things. So you go into the game, you go into the season thinking, okay, well, if those things are true, if Tennessee's defense is what it is, and it is, then you're thinking, oh, obviously Tennessee should be dominant. They should beat everybody because their offense is going to hold their weight. And then Tennessee had a bye week before the Arkansas game, Dave. So I have to say the fan expectation for the offense, because of some of the stuff we said, and the idea of Josh Heupel coming off a bye week while Arkansas has been wrecked, fighting through a gauntlet of a schedule, I think it's reasonable. And I am going to get into the advanced metrics on why you don't have to panic in a second. But in terms of the fan emotion, I have to say it's reasonable for fans to think, wait a minute. If our offense can't win us this game at Arkansas off a bye week, how much trouble are we in?
Okay. Well, the poll question, has Tennessee's fan base overreacted to the loss at Arkansas? Yes, they can still make the college football playoff. 63% no, that was a terrible loss. You could probably be right on both of those. Now, you said 2 weeks. I'm going to say 2 years. Now, you might not want to hear this, but I think there's a very real chance that it takes 2 years to really get in the flow of this offense. And that's scary because I know a lot of people have a lot pinned on this year. I'm going to explain to you why after 30 seconds from Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Okay, so Andre Currick, how good was he last year compared to this year, Caleb?
He was significantly worse last year.
Okay. What was last year? His first year in the program, correct? And this is
Correct.
Year number 2, right?
Correct.
Dante Thornton, what was he last year as he transferred in and as compared to this year?
He struggled significantly early last year.
Okay. Lance Hurd, we don't have the second year yet, but what has he done this year?
He's been terrible. He should give his NIL money back.
Okay. I'm going to argue that the last part of what you said is not true. He's been terrible, but he shouldn't give his NIL money back. What do Tennessee's coaches continually say about this offense? It takes time to feel the whole concept of what you're supposed to do. So, Caleb, if it takes time to feel the whole concept of what you're supposed to do, and that's why some guys are better in year number 2, then is it absurd to think it may take Nico into his second year. I know that's not what anybody wants to hear, but I've just given you two examples of guys that have gone from to good. And I can't help but wonder if that's not across the board, especially at the quarterback position where you have to understand conceptual football, not just throw it to the open guy. I can tell by the look in your face you disagree with me.
Yes, because there's a giant flaw in this. Josh Heupel's first year at UCF. Let's just go all the way back to when he was an offensive coordinator at Missouri. When Josh Heupel took over as an offensive coordinator at Missouri, and this is back in 2016, he took over a terrible program. Missouri went to averaging 31 points a game. Now, you are right. The next year, they went to 37 points a game in the SEC, which is really impressive. Okay. Then Josh Heupel goes to UCF. And his first year at UCF, he goes undefeated and has a top 10 scoring offense, averaging 43 points a game. Then at Tennessee, in 2021, his first year with Hendon Hooker starting at quarterback, and all these guys, their first year in Josh Heupel's system, learning the offense, Tennessee averages 39.3 points a game and is in the top 10. Now, you are right. The second year, they get better, significantly so in all these situations. But it's very clear, based on what Hendon Hooker was able to do in 2021, based on what UCF was able to do in 2018, and based on what Missouri was able to do in 2016, that you can be very good in this offense your first year playing in it. Because otherwise, all those years, those offenses would have been terrible.
Okay, Hendon Hooker wasn't very good in his first year playing. As a matter of fact, he didn't, his first full year, but his first year when he subbed in for Joe Milton, he was great.
He threw for 31 touchdowns and 3 interceptions that year. He averaged 9.5 yards an attempt. I think he was pretty great. His pocket presence wasn't good. He had to take a sack. The team wasn't great, so they still went 7-6. I mean, the difference between, really, if we're being honest, the difference between 21 and 2022, and this is kind of funny when you think about it, is the defense improved significantly. The offense improved, but the defense improvement was what made Tennessee go from 7-6 to 11-2.
Timothy, thanks for the super chat. That'll go to Quincy Calhoun's college fund. If anybody wants to do that, we're not going to ask you for ties like some other places. But Timothy says, when has Tennessee's fans ever overreacted? One loss fire drill, get rid of the staff or the head coach. To me, it's not get rid of the head coach. And we're going to discuss coaches on the hot seat, as there are some significantly on the hot seat that weren't before. And there are some that are more cemented in their position than ever before at the beginning of the season. Clark Lee, I'm talking to you. But listen, I got it. When back in the day, in the 2000s and the early 90s, or previous to a 14 playoff, if you lost to Florida, it was Katie barred the door. That season's over. This is no fun. And only one time, Caleb, when they slipped up to Memphis, literally, because a Memphis player had his elbow down, would they have actually gotten back into the hunt? Most of the time, you're totally out of the hunt throughout the 90s. You are still very much in the hunt. And I think of Nico Iamaleava of here he was in Los Angeles. Nobody knew if his high school team won or lost on Friday. Nobody knew if USC or UCLA won on Saturday. It's LA. There's other stuff to do. But Caleb, he's hearing about this all the time. And it's a time, I think, to be supportive. I still go back to Sunday Sports Sound Off with our own friend Jimmy Himes, and he got calls about whether or not they should go the Gaston Moore direction. Can we all agree that that's just absurd?
Yes. No, you need to stick with what you're doing. Again, in the next segment, I'm going to make the case for Tennessee, and it's going to be a strong one, guys. You guys will all be very, very encouraged after I talk to you, because I'm brilliant and I can impart my brilliance into you guys, and you will be very, very encouraged.
Very humble as well. Game No Bueno, by the way, said Nico has not even come close to Hendon in 2021. Yeah. Y'all have amnesia. Oh, I'll stand corrected on that. That's fair.
Hooker's only issue in 2021 was his pocket presence, but you can make an argument that's because Cooper Mays wasn't fully healthy in 2021. Because it changed dramatically in 2022. So, look, While I will say that Tennessee's loss is not the freak out that everybody has, I'm just going to say, Dave, though, that the fan support is upset because of what they thought they had with the offense. They thought that if the defense could hold teams to under 20 points, which they've held every opponent to under 20 points so far this year, that they should be 5-0. And so I got to be honest, that's where I think the fan base gets it. It's how they've won and the level of expectation for how they won. If this was the night, okay, let me ask you this, Dave. Peyton Manning senior year, when he says he's coming back and everybody's excited, and you were following Tennessee at that time.
Yes, I would say the hype is very, very similar.
What if Tennessee won one loss to Florida, which they did that year, but what if they also under Peyton Manning were putting up 20 points a game through the first half of the season? Fans would be upset because they'd be like, wait a minute, we have this Peyton Manning guy, what's going on?
Wait, that's Gators and oranges. Okay, because he was coming into his senior year. I mean, but and it's pointed out on the message board. I mean, people are saying they still believe in Nico. Good. And maybe that's a poll question, but right now, Caleb, this is still a very young guy. He is 20 years old. Ahmad says Nico still needs to grow. I believe in him, but he needs to let that ball go. He is holding on to it for too long. Yes, he is. But you have to ask yourself, Caleb, if you had to bet a mortgage payment or the super chats that have come in to support your 4-month-old son's college fund, if you had to gamble that on that was an unusual game against an Arkansas defense that manned up for Tennessee from a schematic standpoint, or that Nico's a dud, which would you bet young Quincy's college fund on? And you shouldn't be gambling that, by the way, you degenerate.
I would bet the former. It was an unusual game. But I would also say that this isn't just about Nico. I think the red flags, we've been trashing the offensive tackles all week. The red flags with the offense that aren't Nico related are what has everybody concerned. I mean, again, we had Mike Stoll on yesterday, and he backtracked, but the first thing he said was their offensive line is soft. You heard that, right?
Mm-hmm. And I didn't think he backtracked. I think that soft in our minds is a little bit different than a player's mind. I think soft means you hit the snooze about 15 times and don't want to get up out of bed. I don't think that's what, and I've talked to a lot of players about this. I think soft means that they're not fundamentally sound and or they're hesitant because they're not sure what to do. So I don't think it means that, they're getting beat up by nerds when they go to econ.
Okay. Well, look, it's not about Nico. It's the red flags of the offense in general. It may not even be Nico's fault. You can put it on the offensive line. But if you look at Josh Heupel's track record, his first year at places from UCF to Missouri to Tennessee, it doesn't matter how inexperienced people are in this offense. They put up points. And that's where I think people are concerned. It'd be one thing if, to give you a quick example, for guys who don't know this, it's ironic that I don't know why Philip Fulmer hired Dave Clawson. We can talk about that, but one of the biggest reasons that was a mistake.
I'd rather not.
Well, one of the biggest reasons.
I told him not to, and I said, you're going to be the head coach here for 5 more years if it's true for Taylor. But anyway.
Well, Dave Clawson, one of the reasons it was a mistake was Dave Clawson, the offense he installs is very, very heady. There's a lot of thinking. So it literally you have to be in the offense for 3 years before you really pick it up. And that's everywhere he's been. If you look at everywhere Dave Clawson's been, year 3, he really takes off with his program. He's very good with that. Fulmer didn't need a heady offense there.
Well,
now, but Josh
he also didn't need somebody that he knew he could push around that didn't believe in the same things he believed in. So, I mean, that's why you could have hired Trooper Taylor and it could have been a conglomerate of putting ideas together. Or you hire somebody like Gus Malzahn, who was at Tulsa and putting up the top offensive numbers in the nation, and turn it over to him and say, I'm not touching the offense. Philip Fulmer, I hate this term, split the baby and didn't do either.
Yes, no, that's very true. I agree with you on all that. But to wrap this up, the comparison is just that Dave Clawson's offense takes forever to get figured out. Josh Heupel's offense, again, the history's there. The track record is there. Players figure it out the first year in the system. He's been amazing offensively at every place he's been his first year.
Yeah.
So that's why I can't get. That's why I think the red flag is there.
Okay. Red flag, fine. What's the poll question? Where do we stand on that? As early look at the poll question brought to you by the UPS store Hardin Valley. They're there to help individuals and small businesses by offering a wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated, conveniently located to 10629 Hardin Valley Road, 10629 Hardin Valley Road. Where's our poll question now, Caleb Calhoun?
Has Tennessee's fan base overreacted to the loss at Arkansas? 64%, yes, they can still make the CFP. 36%, no, that was a terrible loss.
Okay,
so
I don't understand with all there is left to play for. I mean, you have got to change your mentality some, just like in the NFL. You see your team lose and you say, hey, there's now 16 more games to go. Ahmad said, I agree with Caleb on this one. This O-line needs to get back on track. We were talking about this O-line like they were the best thing ever through weeks 1, 2, or 3. Now, I will say this. I think that's the biggest of all concerns. And I think I've stayed pretty consistent on offensive tackles. Caleb,
before we move on, yes. And maybe this is a topic for another day, so maybe you should say this, but Justin Lefevre says that it's calling for Larry Johnson to start at left tackle over Lance Hurd, and that could fix the issues. That may be true.
I'm fine with that.
But I have to ask you this, Dave. Is this where NIL is becoming a problem? Are we sure that there aren't some people in Hypels here saying, we gave Lance Hurd a good bit of money, and so you need to start him?
Let's talk about that tomorrow.